morning, everybody. Welcome back. If today is your first day, then you're in for a treat. We have a lot of specialized speakers today that are going to be talking about creating balance in your grief.
Mm,
One thing that I love about Claudine's talk is that not everybody, if you're not a parent, you may not understand, but even if I feel like someone who has children, who you might know someone who has lost a child. But
mhm.
we all, at some point, once we become parents, have to become an empty nester. And some of us don't really know, how to handle that. We don't know, like a lot of times we wait until it happens and then it's like, now what? As opposed to preparing for ahead of time. And so one of the things that I like to focus on when we are becoming grief aware, nobody can prepare for becoming an empty nester due to the death of a child. But as we all know that some things are inevitable. Some things we're going to have to figure out how to live life, whether it's with them in our house or with them in our spirit, in our heart, right?
Mm.
I'm really excited to have such a diverse speaker lined up for today. I really hope that you guys walk away with something specifically for you. And I'm so happy that you're here. If you're watching the replay, put hashtag replay in the comments so that we know that you watched us. And as always, we have giveaways going on during our live session. So please engage with us, ask questions, even if it's for a coworker or somebody else. It might be helpful. Make sure that you share our sessions today.
Okay, Claudine, why don't you introduce yourself to our guests and let them know who you are and how do you come to us and how you ended up on this fabulous stage?
Thanks, Sharon. Well, my name's Claudine Sweeney, like you said, and I'm a certified life coach, and my specialty is working with empty nest women. And how did I get here was interestingly enough through you.
Yeah.
So, right about the time that my nest was emptying, I was really struggling. What I didn't know was I was struggling with grief, and I had no idea. And my husband reached out to you and he's like, "You have got to help my wife. I don't know what's wrong with her, but she needs some help." And so you and I started spending time together as you were my grief coach and helped me understand that what I was actually going through was grieving the loss
Mm.
of my children being home, my identity, my role as full-time day-to-day mom. Everything was wrapped up into that because I had spent 25 years being mom. I
Yeah.
had part-time jobs and I had a career in real estate, but really I was mom. And so when that ended, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do with all my emotions, all the sadness, the loneliness, the confusion. Because honestly, as a mom, if you do a great job, you will outsource yourself, right? You will have your children fly the coop. I mean, that's the goal. If we raise, independent, self-sufficient children, they will leave the nest, and that is the desire. So, part of the other topic of this that I spoke on earlier was when the nest empties too soon,
Yeah.
when you lose a child and now your nest is suddenly empty. And we watched two families very close to ours. Both my sons lost their best friends far too early, far too young, and they were the youngest children in their families. And just watching that, I had already processed my grief of being an empty nester, but then watching these women, these families go through the loss of a child and having their nest empty too soon was just very sobering to watch. And I knew I need to help women, help them with their grief, help them just manage the emptiness stage because there's so much left in life. And, I love to say I want to help women make the second half the best half. Because a lot of times as moms, we think that's it. My life's over now. I was mom. That was my job. That was my role. That was my identity. Now what? There's nothing left for me, right? Or some of us wait till we're grandparents. We're like, well, then I'll have more. But that's how I came through. Honestly, Sharon, was my work with you, and then knowing I wanted to help other women in this stage as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And Kim said, I got to do both. Megan was 29 when she passed.
Mm,
Thank you, Kim, for sharing that. Our heart to yours.
yeah.
And we love when they share their person's name, Claudine, because it gives us the chance to really speak to them personally and and send them love when
Mm,
we're talking to them. So thank you so much, Kim. I I also know that let me ask you that. I have two questions. I have one that's burning in the back, but I want to get to this part. What does emptiness feel like for the griever that's going through it? What does their heart feel like? And is it their thoughts that's driving them crazy, or is it just that feeling of emptiness in their heart? Could you describe what that feels like?
I can speak for myself and the women I've worked with. I do think it's both. I think part of it is situational. You know, the house can be very quiet now, right? That's an actual circumstance or situation. The house was quiet where it might have been filled with noise and laughter and conversation, and now there's a quietness.
Yeah.
The other part is scheduling. The schedule is very different where you're used to getting up and maybe there's breakfast and rides to school and sports and all the activities. Now, all of a sudden, your schedule is empty, which, you know, you would think would feel great. I remember when my kids were little, I thought, I can't wait till they're grown up and I'm going to have all my time back. But the problem is, after 25 years, my time became their time. And so then the heart starts feeling, or the mind, it starts in our thoughts, really. We start thinking about the loneliness and what that means to us. Now I have no one. You know, we start allowing these thoughts, they creep in and then they cause us to feel sad. They cause us to feel lonely. And the pain starts from our thoughts because it starts with a thought. I mean, loneliness it's, you know, a hard feeling, but the quietness of a house is neutral, right? To some people, that's a complete wonderful thing. And to others, it's a very hard, sad thing. So, in and of itself, the circumstance is neutral, but to the thoughts that go with it, I'm all alone. I
Yeah.
have no one. Those thoughts create the pain and the suffering that we feel.
Yeah. We When someone is about to approach the emptiness stage, they can start to prepare because they understand, okay, this is coming. Maybe I
Right.
should start looking ahead. Maybe I should start getting a coach.
Yeah.
What's my future focus going to be? But when that child, you weren't
Mhm.
preparing for it at all,
Right.
and the child through unfortunate circumstances, passes, and we call that out of order death. When out of
Right.
order death happens, um, they get smacked right in the face with the emptiness.
Right.
So they have to. Is there's no way to prepare for that. There's
Right.
no way to. So would you approach it the same? Would you take a couple who's had out of order death and coach them the exact same way?
N I wouldn't. Having watched these 2 families go through, the loss of their sons, they're not prepared to think about what's my next passion and purpose. You know, how am I going to make the second half the best half? That's not the time and place. Right now, it's just about grieving the loss of the child,
Yeah,
the unprepared moment of going through what so many of us think is the hardest thing anybody could go through, the
right.
loss of a child. So we can't prepare, we can't go into finding my next passion and purpose until we've dealt with the loss, the
Yeah,
deep loss and grief of
yeah,
losing a child.
yeah,
So I would suggest that first, doing that work first.
So I know when I was doing some research in preparation of this event, one of the advice that I got, and I never thought about it, was if a child passed away and the school starting back, and
Mm,
people have to prepare their other children for getting on the bus without their sibling, starting a school year, like these new milestones that are sure to come that we don't anticipate because we're so caught up in the grief. Like that's not something we're supposed to prepare for anyway, but that's something that if we're proactive and we have a coach, somebody who can put those
mhm,
plant those seeds in our minds so that while summer is coming, we already ahead of time, we don't wait till the first day of school and then see they have a breakdown and then one and be like, oh my God, of course they're going to have a breakdown because this happens. So in relation to adults, because I know you work a lot with maintaining the adult child relationship, even though
right.
they're not no longer in their house. How would you apply that concept to adults being able to still keep the spirit alive of the person who's no longer here when holidays come up and things are
Mm.
sure to agitate the fact that this person is not going to be with us anymore? What would you say to that audience?
Yeah. To the parents that are working with their other children. Yeah. I think the first thing is to acknowledge your own grief. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we don't want to share that we're sad or we're grieving with our other children because we need to be the strong ones, right? As moms, we need to be the strong one and to be able to share, I'm really sad. I really miss, fill in the blank your child's name today. This was a special, like the holiday. There's an empty chair here. Is addressing it, not trying to sweep it under the rug or hide it, but to acknowledge your own feelings first, because it'll help your children learn how to acknowledge theirs. And it's okay. This is part of life. Unfortunately, grief is part of life. I know I spent way too many years stuffing it all down and denying it. Like if I don't talk about it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So if I don't talk about my pain, it'll go away faster, right? These are some myths we have about grief. And if I don't talk about my children, I don't want to make my children sad. I don't want to remind them about the loss of their sibling. So let's just not talk about it. Let's just go on as though nothing's happened. But in reality, we're doing more damage.
And there's a question at the bottom of the screen that says, how do you navigate well-meaning but potentially painful comments or questions from others about your emptiness?
That's a tough one. I'm assuming the question is about a nest that's empty too soon as
Yeah.
opposed to the traditional empty nest. And I would just be honest as I could be, is just this is really hard for me. You might not even be ready to talk about it. You might say, this is really hard for me and I'm not ready to talk about it, but thank you so much. I see your concern and I appreciate your concern. And when I'm able, I'll get back to you or whatever. But yeah, I mean, just acknowledge, be truthful. This is hard for me and I'm not ready to talk about it. Or depending on the comment, just
Yeah.
you know, you just
I
let it.
love that. I
Yeah,
absolutely love that. I know a lot of times I'll tell clients to say thank you. Just say thank you, because when you say thank you, it sets the boundary up. Thank you for
yeah,
asking, but I can't talk about that right now. Kim
yes,
says I was too busy pretending everything is okay. One of the things that you and I talk about is how people will not address their grief or their pain.
yeah,
And I'm calling this a grieving experience. It's a grieving experience. So they
yeah.
pretend like it's okay because that's the one technique that they have to help
Hmm.
them through. What
Right.
advice do you have for I'm going to call them the pretender?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's okay to not be okay,
Yeah.
right? It's okay to be not okay. Why are we taught to pretend that we have to pretend like everything's okay? Why
Yeah.
do we have to pretend? Why? Why can't we own our emotions? Why
Yeah.
can't we just say, I'm having a really hard time. I'm grieving. Everything is not okay. I don't know why our culture and our society has us that way, but I certainly, that goes back to I need to be strong. We have beliefs below that. You're busy pretending you're not okay because there's a belief there. There's a belief that perhaps it's not okay for you to not be
Yeah.
okay. Or you need to be the strong one. You're the mom, or you're holding the family together. So you need to be the one to be strong. So maybe that's why maybe there's a belief that everything will fall apart if you're not okay. There's an underlying belief there that has to be addressed to find out why you feel need to be busy pretending that everything's okay when it's not.
Yeah.
When it's
Yeah.
not.
Joy, one of the things that you and I have been talking about over the last few weeks is the griever trying to pretend like they're strong, and Claudine just hit on it. What advice do we give the griever that's out there? I think the pretender is the one trying to pretend like she's strong, because we have no other
Mhm.
tool. What advice do we give to the griever that's out there just absolutely trying to muscle through this?
I
Especially
think
as a parent, because you lead a parent group, so you probably see that a lot.
Right. I think that the processing part that we've been talking about, especially in your presentation yesterday, really understanding how important it is to process, because there are many layers to how
Mhm.
you're feeling. You might obviously the top layer is I lost my child. But
Mhm.
then when you get deep down into the pity of it, you start talking about how it's going to affect your other relationships. You start talking about how it's going to affect your identity, like Claudine said. The very next question I was
Mhm.
about to ask, because I think what happens is it reminds me of how people say, people who grieve a divorce versus a widow who grieves the death of their loved one. And there, last year we talked about how that is offensive to some widowers because they can never get their person back. But at the end
Yeah.
of the day, the emotion, the loss, that is what we're getting to the root of. And I think that no matter and I'm not saying no matter, like it doesn't matter, but at the end of the day, you are grieving the ability to be able to care for your child. Your
Hmm.
child is not here for you to care for, whether they're adult and they flew the coop, or
Mhm.
if they're just not physically here in the present. So my question to you, Claudine, as you said, because grief takes many forms and there's no one size fit all approach, what coping strategies or self-care practices have been particularly helpful for you? Because I think even with your population of women, these coping strategies are going to be helpful for people who've lost their child as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very important. Again, like I said, if I hadn't worked with Sharon was my grief coach. I had to work with a grief coach to first understand what grief was.
Yeah.
Secondly, to learn how to process my emotions because I didn't know how to do that. I'm a great emotion stuffer. I like to eat my emotions. I like to Netflix binge my emotions. I need to lie in bed with my emotions, but that's how I coped. Obviously not healthy. There's no growth there. It implodes. You'll implode, which is where I ended up imploding. So learning what grief was, learning how to process my emotions, and then even learning where my emotions came from. Once I started understanding all that, then I was equipped to handle whatever life threw at me. I've been equipped since that time to go, okay, I'm not saying it'll be easy at any rate. If I lose one of my children, I'm not going to say that's easy,
Yeah.
but I will be equipped. I will have the tools that I've been taught to be able to process my grief, to be able to cope in healthier ways than eating and Netflix binging, which um, are short term, right? They're short term. They make you feel good in the short term. Feels really good to eat. Feels really good to binge a show, but then stay really busy. That was another way I coped with stress back in the days. I would stay so busy that I didn't have time to feel anything because I collapsed in bed exhausted, right? There was no time to think or feel. I just did. And those aren't healthy strategies. So working with a grief coach for me was crucial. I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't worked with Sharon, who happened to be my grief coach. And then self care practices, just tuning in, learning about my emotions, learning how to name them. Like I didn't even know what my emotions are. I had two emotions. I had angry and depressed. Those were my two emotions. I just had two. And, on occasion happy, but mostly angry and depressed, and learning where they came from, how to process them and be able to name them, claim them, name them, and tame them. That's what I had to learn to do. And those are strategies that have helped me cope.
May I share something sort of personal about our work together? I won't reveal anything, but when Claudine first came to me, she was like, "I don't know what this is, and I don't even know if you can help me." And she just started telling me her story, and I
Mhm.
just looked at her and I was like, "It's grief.
Yeah.
It's grief. You're grieving." And it
Mhm.
was like that we can find grief in so many different ways,
Mhm.
right? There's so 45 plus or known losses can cause a grieving experience in our heart. And you wouldn't have thought, I don't think, Claudine, way back then, that I need to see a grief coach.
Never.
Like you were trying to figure out. And I think for a lot of us, unless we have the absolute death certificate, we're not going to call it grief. We're not going to look for a grief coach.
Right.
And you were one of the people that came to me and said, I don't know what this is. And we
Yeah.
just sat, I can remember it sitting on my couch and we
Right.
were like, I was like, it's grief. And
Yeah.
that's I think happens a lot. It happens to the empty nester too. I don't think they realize that their heart has been pushed into a grieving experience, feeling the loss.
Mhm.
I want to
Okay,
ask, I
go
want
ahead.
to ask while we're talking about coping strategies, do you recommend journaling? Because that's my lane. That's something that I'm always helping people not only to process their emotions, but to plan for the future, organize
Mhm.
things. Like I feel like people don't realize there's so many things you could do with journaling. So that's always my go-to when it comes to coping strategies and self-care things. What were you going to say, Sharon?
I was just saying that I think it would be really beautiful even if a mom wrote a journal to her child,
Mm,
right? And continued on the conversation.
yes.
Joy, I think that you just, I think that would
Like
be
that.
beautiful. Yeah.
Or even
Yeah.
after a big family event, writing to say, I wish you was here. I knew if you was here, this what would be happening, and kind
Mm,
of reflecting. So even though you're reflecting on your current event, writing it to your child makes it more meaningful, but you still are documenting your experiences
Yeah.
and what it was like for the family and for everybody. Or sometimes people spend certain holidays alone. Like I watched a show called, I think it was called Mother's Day, but it was about these three women who their kids kind of forgot about their Mother's Day.
mm,
And they all had different personalities, where some of them was confident enough to pop up on their child and interrupt their life, like, you're going to remember Mother's Day. Other ones was like trying to do it in a subliminal way, where they were nervous to like interrupt their child and they really didn't know. So again, I know we're talking about people who may not have that opportunity, but the concept of it is relatable, so that people can understand that there are going to be times where days are going to pass and you have to figure out, well, how do I make the most of today? What kind of activities, because we like to give our like ninja advice during these calls, like what kind of activities would you recommend people do in order to cope, in order to take care of themselves?
yeah. Well, I love the journaling. I love journaling. I think it's a great coping. I also think self-care. It's a wonderful opportunity. Spend a few minutes or however long you have. I think sometimes when I think journaling, I think an hour, but it doesn't have to be an hour. It can be a few minutes. Journaling. I love the idea of journaling to the child that is no longer here. I mean, what an amazing way to keep that connection, to keep the conversation going. I also love the idea of journaling about our emotions, what we're feeling. That helps us process them. It helps us be able to name them. I'm feeling this. I'm feeling that. I think this. I think that. Then we have a really good picture of where we're at. I think journaling can be like a roadmap. How do we know where we're going to go if we don't know where we are? If we don't know where we are, one of the biggest fights my husband and I ever had was in Italy many years ago. He was driving and I had a road map. He's like, okay, tell me where to go. And I'm like, okay, but where are we? Like, there were no street signs. I'm like, where are we? He's like, I don't know. Just tell me where to go.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't tell you where to go until I know where we are. And that was such a life lesson for me. Like at the time, it was not a life lesson. At the time, it was miserable because we're fighting. But I remember that and I use that. We need to know where we are, and journaling can help us get in touch with where we're at, even in the moment where when our heart is so filled with grief and we can't even think straight. I know I've been there where I can't even think straight. I can barely put a foot in front of another. When one of my son's friends did pass, it was like I had lost a nephew. I don't want to say son because that takes away from what the mom felt. But for me, it was like losing a nephew. We had known him since
Yeah.
he was 10. He was in and out of our home. I couldn't function. I mean, I couldn't function. I
Yeah.
couldn't cook. I couldn't do anything. So journaling may be even, I can't function today. It might be as simple as that, but then you'll see the progression over time
Yeah.
when that the brain fog lifts a little bit. I mean, eventually you can start to think a little bit more clearly. But I know for a time, none of us could think. We couldn't cope. It was just, you know, it was too much.
Oh,
Let's
wait.
keep Claudine on the screen. I'm going to go through some of the comments real quick.
Wait, hold on,
Okay.
because I wanted to ask
Oh,
something about what she just said. Hold on, let's pull it down.
yeah.
We definitely are going to talk about some of the comments, but I wanted when like how you said a nephew, I love how you phrase that. It's like you still want to pay homage to the mom who lost her child, but a lot of times we have this residual feeling as a community, when the kids are growing up or the kids are no longer making the noise and being
Right.
in the front yard. So could you just share about that? We had somebody in the comments talking about kids going away to college. So I wanted to really give you the opportunity to touch on that, because I think that's a very important part about becoming an empty nester. Not just you, but as a community, as somebody, your best friend who comes to your house all the time and is used to seeing your kids there. How do you help people respect and honor that part of it?
Yeah. Well, usually a lot of our friends are in the same boat at the same time. So there's a lot of commiserating. We're like, little Michelle went off to college. Oh, yeah, so did Susie. So there's a lot of that support within, like, I know that happened for me. My friends, we were all at about the same stage in life. It was very helpful to have women in the same stage. Other ones that had younger kids didn't even connect. Like, they
Yeah.
didn't connect to them. It was like, Michelle could have been out with her friends. So they didn't connect like they went off to college. So a lot of my friends that had younger children didn't even recognize, again, I didn't recognize it, but didn't recognize that I could be grieving because they weren't in that stage yet. So it hadn't happened to them yet. So they didn't recognize the pain, the grief of when your children are all going off and leaving. They weren't there yet. My other friends, the ones who had been there or even were ahead of me or a little older, they were great support because they understood. They're like, "Oh yeah, I remember. It's hard." And they were able to ask questions. But so that was helpful. But the ones that are younger, they don't know yet. They don't know yet because they haven't been there yet.
Yeah, exactly. And so sometimes what happens also is that we have a loss. It may be a year or two before the child goes to college. And if we don't deal with that grief the way we're supposed to, that child leaving for college just adds to it. I want to share this. This is the one I wanted to share. I am an empty nester. Before my husband passed, me and my husband had to grieve everything. There were the empty nesting before getting everything was getting better. Then my husband passed. So now the grief is totally different and hard to get through.
Hmm.
So she's making a statement here that even so, the two can tie in together. You can
Yeah.
become the empty nester first,
Yeah.
which is a grieving experience. So you and your
Yeah.
spouse are going through it. Then, bless her heart, her husband
Yeah.
dies. So now she's got this whole
Yeah.
new thing coming up. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
I wanted to use this as a lead into another question. A lot of times what we find in the emptiness syndrome is that our marriage wasn't in the best shape.
Right.
It
Yeah.
wasn't in the best shape, but the kids were keeping us together. That
Yeah.
busyness that you talked about earlier, that was keeping us together. It was keeping us going.
Yep.
Now I become an empty nester and it's just me and him in the house. And guess what? I don't like him, and he
Mhm.
probably don't like me either. What happens in that case? What advice do you have for something like that? Because that can also happen after the loss of your child.
Right. So
Right.
the back to the woman who's lost her husband while being an empty nester. So he was a sense of support,
Yeah.
and now you've lost support. So that support you need to find more support. Because if you were grieving the empty nest together and working through it and supporting each other through it, and now
Wow.
you have this new grief, because I think she said it's so hard to get through. It's totally different, so hard to get through. Well, you've just lost, like, it's like you had two legs to stand on to deal with the grief of your child and the empty nest or the empty nest, and now one leg less. So you need to find another support to be able to stand. It's so important to have that support. And then, speaking of the marriages and the separation, that is very true. And in fact, I think right before, it's probably right around the same time, maybe a couple before years before I started working with you, Sharon. We have four children, and our third was 17. And I remember just being so irritated with my husband, and I thought our marriage was over for sure. And I remember telling him, when she's 18, I'm leaving you. And he said, "Don't I know it?" He knew, because it was like over in my mind. I'm like, I am so done. But I didn't even want to wait till the fourth was an adult. I'm just like, I'm just going to wait for my daughter to be an adult. And then I'm ending this because I can't take this anymore. Well, we didn't end it. It was a lot of work to repair our marriage. But it's true. So many marriages, the kids have been the center for so long, and then when the kids leave, there's nothing. There's
Yeah.
nothing. You're both looking at each other and going, "I don't even know who you are anymore." And
Yeah.
you may have both grown apart. Like,
Yeah.
my husband and I now still have very separate interests, but we respect and support each other's interests instead of looking at you going, "Why would you do that? I don't like, I'm not interested in that, so you shouldn't be either." Now it's like, that's great. I love that you love that. That's so great for you.
Go jump out the plane. That's great.
I wanted to share. So I that share really reminded me. Well, I have 4 children too. However, we had ours. We met October 2011 and found out September 2012 we was pregnant.
Mm,
And I had just graduated from college. We were not like, you know what it feels like when you just get out of school trying to figure it out and
yeah.
get a career, things like that. So then we had them back to back. So I spent the next 6 years being pregnant with the 4 kids that I had, and we didn't ever go on a vacation or spend time just he and I until
Yeah.
our youngest was about 2 or 3. I remember being pregnant with my youngest, and I already got these 3 little ones. I'm pregnant. We went on a day trip. We left that morning and we came back that night because that's how much we spent time
Yeah.
away. And I say that to say there's people watching this now that could not imagine what life would be like as an empty nester, regardless of the circumstances. But
Hmm.
you have to be intentional about still keeping
Yes.
that relationship alive, even while your kids are young. Me
Yes.
and my husband really, really struggle. Like I put on the calendar date night with my wife, and it was on the calendar, and we still missed it because
Yeah.
life happens, things come up.
Yeah.
But again, I need to put it back on there. I need to be intentional about not letting those days pass where I'm like, well, why bother? We try to do it, it's not working. We're just gonna spend time with the kids when we really need a time together as adults. And you'll see how solid your relationship will be when you face adversity, tragedy, those things,
Yeah.
because you built the strong foundation. Your kids can see that you guys love on each other and not just on the children.
Yeah. And I love what you said, being intentional and putting date night on the calendar. I can't tell you how many, my husband and I work with married couples through at our church, and I can't tell you how many couples let the date night slide. And Joy, like you, my husband and I had our first at 21, and we weren't married yet. So we had our child before we were married. So we had to learn to prioritize our time, and that our date night was more important than our time with the kids, which is really hard. Us moms, we'd rather, most of us, we'd rather just be with our kids, and, it's all about them. But to prioritize and be intentional about day night and keep those lines of communications open and not talk about the kids. So that's part of the other
Mhm.
thing. You can't
Yeah.
go on date night and talk about the kids, because and so a lot of times for years we'd be like, I had nothing else to talk about because the kids were my life. So it helped teach me, like, I need to have some other interests as well, which I did have some interest in. I always worked part time, but to be intentional, put it on the calendar, because if you fail to plan, you're going to plan to fail. So
Yeah.
at least get it on the calendar. You may not always make it, but at least it's on the calendar. You're both aiming for that same thing. And just to be able to talk about other things, about interests, or what are you reading, or what are you watching, or so many things to talk about other than kids, but it takes effort. It takes intention to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I'm gonna go back to some of the comments. Let's
Yeah.
put, Claudine back up. I wanna talk about address Kim. Kim says self-care when you feel like you don't deserve it is very difficult. Let's break down the definition of self-care, because I think that a lot of times we think that self-care, and I say this sometimes jokingly, it's not just chocolate cake and a hot bath, right? For the
Right.
griever, just getting in the shower is
Right.
self-care.
Yeah.
Brushing your teeth is self-care. There are so many grievers who don't even wanna do their normal daily routines. Eating a meal other than the chips is self-care. So once we need to understand that. The 2, remember Naomi said, you have to look at where you're at today, and if you're absolutely okay with not taking that bath, not taking that shower, and not eating, then it's okay. So I think
Yeah.
because self-care is the new woo-woo word, we feel like we fall short of doing the self-care sometimes. I
Right.
help Kim out with this a little bit.
Oh
What's
wait,
your
and then
thought on
Kim
this?
says from where your comment, self-care will be on my
I
calendar.
know.
Look at that.
I saw that too. I'm like, "Go Kim." Like, I don't even think I have it on my calendar, but I do it instinctually, but I love that. I agree with Kim when she said, self-care when you don't feel deserving, it's difficult. That's
Yeah.
hard. As a mom of 4, certainly when they were younger and even after they went off to college and off on their own, I felt like self-care was selfish. So I had to change the underlying belief that taking care of myself was selfish. Like, there are people dying in the world, I should be go taking care of bigger needs than my own. I really believe that. I believe that it was better to care for others than myself. And then I think with Sharon, it was about 2013 when I started imploding. I realized that putting myself on the back burner, I couldn't help anybody. At this point, I was done. I mean, I was, in the fetal position for so much of the time. So it's kind of like, I love the metaphor of the airplane, right? They always tell you put your mask on before you
Mm,
put the mask on your children. And to me now that's what self-care has become. Like, if I am not taking care of myself, I can't help anybody else. And I know as a mom, if I was on that plane, it'd be really hard not to want to put the mask on my kids first, right? But I have 4 of them, so I would only get so far before that I was the end of me, but I can quickly put on 1 and then take care of 4. And so self-care for me has not been about being selfish or being deserving. It's not about being deserving. We all deserve self-care. I do
Yeah.
believe it's great stewardship of the life we've been giving when we take care of ourselves, our health, our emotional well-being, our physical well-being, our mental well-being. That's great stewardship of this great life we've been given, and we can help many more people once we've taken care of ourselves.
I am currently working with an amazing woman. I am just so impressed with her and the amount of healing that she's doing. I just texted her and asked her if I could share her story. And she said yes. She's going to be on the platform tomorrow. I'm going to be interviewing some past clients and also a current client that I'm working with. And my friend Sherry, who gave me permission, lost 2 people back to back
Mm,
to each other. And then her daughter went off to college.
mm,
And she was diagnosed with empty nest syndrome. When my mother passed, I had my brother, and her brother were very close. He was a protector of her. They were best friends. They did everything together. She shares how they hung out together. And 3 years later, after her brother passed away, she was taking care of his one and only child, his niece.
mhm.
And the niece went off to college, and then her nest became empty. And this
Oh,
was an exact example of what we're talking about, and
yeah,
how she also added one other thing in here, which led her to she got scammed. She got
yeah,
scammed. Hold on, I keep hitting the button. Um, because and she'll tell more of her story tomorrow, but a scammer it opened up the door to allow a scammer to come in, and she was being scammed. And it is in our grief, it is our pain. The
yeah,
nest is empty. We want something to fill that hole.
right,
And if we don't feel deserving of our self-care, we're going to look for it wherever we can
right.
and try to find me.
and we become vulnerable. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I had to learn for myself. So this I'm going to share for myself. I think I used to relegate my happiness and fulfillment to others. So first it was my children, or it was my husband, or it was my friends. I thought that these people would make me happy, that they would make me fulfilled. And so I had to learn that certainly they make me happy and fulfilled, but that's not where I get filled up. So I have to be able to be fulfilled and happy all by myself. And that's easy to say and very hard to do. And it does start with self-care, but I I had to learn not to look to others to fill my cup because I did that for many years. I thought, although my situation's different than Sherry's, I think I did lean on my friendships. I did lean on my husband. I did lean on my children to fill my happiness cup, my fulfillment cup, my um, you know, opposite of loneliness cup. I looked to people to do that for me, and I came to a point, I had many things in life all kind of happen at the same time, loss of friendships, kids, empty nest, all these things were happening at once when I started meeting with you, Sharon. And I started realizing too that I need to learn how to be happy and fulfilled all on my own,
Yeah.
like my own 2 feet. Of course, other people bring me tremendous joy. I mean, one of my love languages is time, quality of time. So I love spending time with people. But if I never spend time with people again, will I be okay?
Yeah.
Will I be okay? And that's what I had to learn. I had to figure out, how can I be okay if something happens to my husband? How can I be okay? My children are all gone. They are all out of the nest. And currently I have 3 on the other side of the country and I have 1 in the same state. So now I'm not only are they out of the house, we're not even the same state. So can I be okay with that? How can I be okay? Um, on my own. And that's taken a lot of work. And that's taken for me other coaches to get in there and help me figure out, process all my beliefs and my thoughts and how can I be okay and give me the tools to be okay, to be happy, to be fulfilled when there's no one else there.
That is 100% what we're talking about because a lot of times after a loss, that hole, we're trying to fill a hole.
Right. Right.
It's a hole in our heart that we're trying to
Yeah.
fill, and we will fill it with whatever we can, which makes it easier for us, a scammer to step in.
Yeah.
It makes it easier for us. We see a lot of grievers that go and spend all their money. They get insurance money. They spend it all right away. They because they're just trying to fill this emptiness and this hole.
Yeah.
What about do you advise empty nesters to find new hobbies and fill the void that was left with their children with hobbies, activities, travel, the schedule? Like, do you suggest that they do that as part of their self-care?
Yeah, I do think find what you're interested in. Now this is difficult sometimes. I remember again, my baby is just turned 29, so I'm a little removed from the emptiness, but I clearly remember my grief about it. I remember all my emotions. But I remember thinking I didn't even remember what I liked. Like I didn't even know what I liked to eat because I was cooking for 6 for so many years and I had to do, what they love. Like no one else likes eggplant parmesan. So guess who didn't eat eggplant parmesan for 20 years? Me. So it was even just reconnecting with what do I like to do? Like, who
Yeah.
am I? And also, I'm different. I was now about 45, give or take, as opposed to being a 21-year-old single woman. Now I was a 45-year-old mature woman. I had to reconnect with what do I enjoy? What do I like doing? What do I like eating? Right? I didn't even know what I like to eat again because I was feeding 5 other people. And usually, I had to, I was not a you get this and you get this. No, I made one meal and we're all eating it and that's that. And if you don't like it, it'll be on the counter. And then if you're hungry later, you can eat it. I would tell my kids, this is not Burger King and we do not do it your way. So, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. But I had to connect with what I like to eat or what I
Yeah.
like to do. And then I realized, oh, I really loved the beach. That was one of my things when I was young and a teenager. I loved the ocean. And at the time, we lived close to the ocean. So I could just go out there. It was 45 minutes away and I could do that. But I hadn't done that a lot before because we were so busy. I love going to movies. Again, didn't do that a lot because we are busy with activities and sports. And so it kind of became a game like, what does Claudine like to do? And just figure it out. And it was kind of fun.
That is the best advice because I'm telling you, grievers do the same thing. They get this feeling of loneliness and isolation, and they're like, do I even do the things that I still love? Do I even still go there? Absolutely, 100%. So let's see here. I look like I went crazy with my lipstick this morning. Okay, Joy, here you go.
All right. And so if you're new to this, and Claudine, you didn't know, but we do our giveaways just randomly before we end our call. I'm looking at Facebook because some people haven't registered and I want to make sure I see all of the people that's in here. But I think today it would be most fitting to give Kim Daly the giveaway for her engagement and her shares. We appreciate you, Kim, especially for putting that self-care on your calendar. That is something that we
Yeah.
encourage everyone to do. And so maybe with your Amazon gift card, you need to use it for something self-care related.
Oh, there you go.
So we will email you and give you access to that. Thank you again. And I know Kim was one of our participants last year in the Gone Too Soon retreat. So welcome back, Kim. Thank you for joining us.
Um, so we like to end with actionable steps, Claudine. So what actionable steps can you give these women that may be empty nesters, may have gone through emptiness, or feeling the feeling of emptiness because of grief and loss? What actionable steps would you like to give them?
Yeah. Well, first, if your nest has emptied too soon because the loss of a child, get grief support right away. Get someone at your side that can really walk with you, hold your arms up while you're going through this grief experience. That to me is number one. Two, I love the self care. I mean, it's time to start caring for yourself. I know it can feel selfish or that you're unworthy, but really start practicing self care. And that looks different for everyone, but care for yourself as you would care for a loved one or a friend. Like as moms, we're really good at taking care of others and putting their needs before our own. But now we need to turn that back on ourselves and start taking care of ourselves, our physical well being, emotional well being, mental well being, spiritual well being. It's time to take care of ourselves and then have fun with it. Try to explore, what do you love to do? Maybe there's a new passion or purpose, something. For me, it became coaching because I went through my experience. I'm like, wait, other people don't know this. I need to help other women learn this so they don't get stuck like I was for years,
Yeah.
because we're going on some time now. So for me, that became my passion and my purpose. But for others, it could be to write a book. I know we had Ken Gidros, and he wrote a great book about his experience. And I finished that book last week. What an amazing, amazing story. So we all have something. So go after it. You do have time now. So the grief, process the grief, self care, and then have fun and explore your passions and purposes.
That's amazing. Claudine, I want to say thank you so much. You did a fantastic job of bringing it together and bringing it home. Thank you so, so much. We're going to be changing lives. We're changing lives. This
Mm.
is perfect. Okay, Joy, what do we have next?
Well, I want Claudine to go ahead and let people know how to reach you if they want to work with you, if they know someone experiencing emptiness, for them to be able to connect with you and even consider you as a coach.
Sure. My website is claudinesweeney.com, and I have freebies on there. I have free resources, there's guides. There's a Master Your Midlife workshop, which addresses the key issues of when your nest is empty. And there's resources on there. So, yeah, claudinesweeney.com will bring you to the homepage. And then anything you need to know is on that page.
And we actually linked your that workshop that you just said right under your
Oh,
presentation. So if
great.
you go to Claudine's presentation and click the gift, it's a free workshop for you to be able
Great.
to is master your midlife, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Your midlife.
Yeah.
All right, so thank you. I want to say thank you so much. I do think this is such a unique topic, but you see, as a part of our engagement, that it's
Mm.
relevant. People
Yeah.
need to hear, and people need to know what it looks like to cope and heal when they become an empty nester.